All right. I want to weigh in on a topic that's very dear to my heart and something I care a lot about, and that is the Israeli IDF draft vis-a-vis the Haredi population and what I think would be the solution to the problem. Now, obviously, I'm going to get a lot of things wrong, and you might think, who am I to talk about this topic anyway? And that's your prerogative. Please, comment if that's the way you feel. But I assume that humanity is very good at solving problems when they have the right incentives. And so when I see a long-standing problem, a complicated problem, but a problem that hasn't had solution in a long time, had a solution in a long time, I usually assume that a lot of the people involved are not negotiating in faith. And I think this problem is solvable. It would take a lot of negotiation on both sides, but I think it's a solvable problem if everybody comes with in good faith. Now, I want to talk about what the problem is. Traditionally, Shiva students were exempt from the army as long as they were in yeshiva, and this created like a conundrum where as the yeshiva system got really, really big, so people almost stayed in the yeshiva system, in some ways less not to work, but rather just to not to be drafted, because the army in its traditional sense is truly a threat to Haredi lifestyle. The army it's the regular army. We can talk about different units that they've made, but the regular army is definitely a threat to that. And so it's pushed this lifestyle into the Haredi world where people don't work. Some people stay in Shiva just to not have to go through the army service, and that's changing in some ways. And then there's a lot of what also happens is, because they don't do regular army service, they don't do miluim, which is a reserve duty. So, and this is really, I think, where the crux of the problem is that besides for like whether the army does or doesn't need regular troops, I think that it's very clear that they need more reservists. I think a lot of people felt rightly that it wasn't fair that like they're during the war, that their husbands had to be missing for months on end, and they didn't have in the Haredi population. And I think there's some fairness to there is a fairness question in terms of war. I'm not talking about someone in yeshiva. I'm talking about someone that's maybe working, but because of the way the system worked, it doesn't have reserve duty. So this is my belief. This is what I think will be the solution. And I think a solution where I think my solution is both respects the reality of the situation and seeks to find the best outcome for both sides. So I think the idea that you're going to get yeshiva-lite to agree to go to the army while they're learning yeshiva is not going to happen. I think it's a mistake to try. I think the state of Israel should recognize that yeshiva service is a contribution to the state, and in Jewish theology protects our people, and that's a legitimate belief. And I think that if someone's learning full-time in yeshiva, they should be exempt. I know that would be a hard pill to swallow, but I think if you look at the reality on the ground, that's what's going to end up happening anyway. All that's going to end up happening is you're going to have these sanctions on yeshiva bochum. But at the end of the day, they're not going to constrict yeshiva bochum, and the army's not really equipped to do it. They have these special units. They always claim to, we have someone Haredi, but they never look terribly Haredi to me. And even if they are Haredi, that would be okay, but they're not Haredi, because they're the big leaders of the Haredi will do not recommend going to the regular army. That being said, there is no reason for when someone leaves yeshiva, when someone eventually goes out to work, which I think under a new type of system many would. There is no reason for somebody to learn some sort of skill that they can do in reserve duty. The majority of the army skills are jobniks, are tasks, office tasks, facilitating tasks, making sure things get from point A to point B, office work, coordination. And in the age of remote work, there is no reason why a base can't be set up in Bnei Brak. Why can't the army come to the leaders of the Haredim and say, look, under what we will do whatever you say. Under what circumstances would you allow Haredi populace to serve under certain capacities in the army? More and more are going to be fought with computers. They're going to be fought with drones. They're going to be fought with robots. And there's no reason why we can't say, due to certain religious difficulties, we are we've created these certain roles that are very that again, anybody that wants to sign up for the regular Kravi or these different Haredi units, Haredi-ish units that they could still sign up for. But I think a real option like this, or again, for the people that are not learning, would go a lot, and then to have some sort of millim system for people that are, I think would go a long way to alleviate the burden. And I think that the fact that nobody talks about solutions like these, incremental solutions that can create good faith instead of just anger, I think speaks to the fact that the current leaders do not want to solve the problem. And I think the animosity to the Haredi world is extremely misplaced. We saw during war how, even though not formally the Haredi population wasn't mobilized, but informally we saw food deliveries and chizuk and doing things all over the country. The Haredi volunteers for things like Hatzalah and Chaverim is certainly a society that wants to give. And I think that is certainly something that can be achieved. In terms of national service, I've always felt that the secular in Israel are certainly not receiving the education that their birthright requires them to, that they're certainly not getting a religious education. Bring them to the yeshiva, let them get chaburas from these Haredi Jews learning in Kollel. Come see what it means to what authentic Yiddishkeit looks like. There's a lot of ways to do. There's a lot of national service. And to the question of how much money the Israeli government should spend in yeshivas, I do not think the government should fund any sort of education. I'm a libertarian. But once governments are wasting money on all sorts of things, I suspect that the yeshivas are not a tremendous deviation from that. And those are my solutions. Please let me know if you agree or you disagree or you think I'm nuts. All right, that would be today, guys.